What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. The Pokémon series is no stranger to repeating things every now and again, like having the same characters be important on multiple occasions, towns that might look just a little too similar to each other, or even Pokémon ideas that keep coming up over and over again. And sometimes that works out great, but other times it makes you wonder, did we really need to copy it so closely? Whether that's for the Pokémon themselves or anything else in the series. So let's take a look at some of the most unnecessary repetitions in Pokémon. Number 6. Late Ice types. Out of all of the types in Pokémon, Ice is actually the smallest, meaning there are fewer Ice types than even Ghost or Dragon, so it's had to be neglected pretty hard since Gen 1 to be overtaken in that way. But a major reason for that would be the fact that we never see any Ice Pokémon until right at the end of the game every time. That restricts Ice to 1 or 2 lines per generation because the frozen areas of the game are so comparatively small. Not to mention you more than likely have a full team by then, so for some reason Game Freak thinks that Ice is too difficult of a type to handle before you become more experienced. Yet Ice is incredibly fragile, so you could pretty easily shatter them with just some simple normal attacks. So that makes it all the more frustrating when Ice is locked away behind the 7th gym, because there are ways of doing it. Alola showed us how with the Seaward Cave, having some pretty terrible Ice types actually, but the point was that you could indeed find them within the first island, instead of having to wait all the way until Victory Road. So you could just as easily have made that happen in any other region. The small part of Mount Coronet that you go through to get to Hearthome could have been cold enough for some Ice-type Pokémon. It could have even contained the Ice Rock in there to get Glaceon much sooner. And it would be some fun irony to get Ice types right after the Grass Gym, almost like a reward for doing well without them. But at the very least, they could opt to make some early route regional Pokémon part Ice type eventually. I'm not pushing for the whole starting town to be in a tundra or anything, but it's getting real old to have to wait so long for Ice every single time we play through a new game. Number 5. Violet. The term alone is innocuous enough, but it's odd that it comes up so often in so many important ways. The first time we saw the Violet name was as the first city with a gym in Johto. This makes it unforgettable to anyone who played any Gen 2 games, since you're at least gonna make it to the first gym. But where some towns are focused entirely around their gym, really for Violet, having one is just a nice bonus, with the main draw being the Sprout Tower, which makes this place even more impressive. Plus, you can get an early Onyx trade here, which is great to have a wall against the flying gym. So it was a bit weird to me that they took the name of one of Johto's most iconic locations and used it as a name for a full-blown version. It just sort of dilutes the specialty of both. I mean, the closest we ever got was the trademark for a Pokémon Vermilion version, and we've never seen a Pokémon Goldenrod version or a Cerulean version. Actually, speaking of, in the anime, one of Misty's sisters, who featured quite heavily in the story, was also named Violet along with the other flower names, and even the Let's Go games had the names of her sisters as the names of the trainers in the gym, Violet included. So it seems that they're all about using this word in Pokémon when there are so many other colors or flowers that we could be trying out. It's not higher on the list because I know that the Japanese names are different, but that doesn't help Western audiences who keep getting Violet thrown at them needlessly every few years. Number 4. Water-type fish. I know when you say it out loud like that it kinda sounds stupid, where else are fish supposed to be after all? But I'm specifically referring to pure water-type Pokémon that are just kind of basic fish that you would find out in the ocean. Just like how you wouldn't say, there are too many cat Pokémon overall, but normal-type cats, however. I mean, some of the fish are really cool, like Barraskewda, but in total there are 13 pure water fish in this school, not including alternate forms that they might have. And then when you count as broadly as possible across the whole rest of the water type, there are maybe 15 other fish, and that's stretching the definitions to encompass things like Gyarados and Tatsugiri. My point being, there are just as many, if not more, monotyped fish than there are in all of the dual typings of water, which leads to a boring predictability whenever we see a fish appear. So we might as well stop having that kind of Pokémon. Again, I know that fish live in the water, but there are ways that you can make them stand out, like the anglerfish that are also electric types, or the weird ugly fish that's also a psychic type. That's all I'm saying. Just because it's a bland fish doesn't mean that you have to intentionally make it less noticeable against the backdrop that is the most populated type in the game. You could even go fully the other way and make it so bland and boring that it's a normal and water type if you wanted, but I do think they're on the right track, because when they revisited Basculin, they let him evolve into a half-ghost type, and then Chi-Yu is a little fish that's not even a water type at all. So maybe in the future they won't have fish be so predictable, and leave the pure water typing to something just a bit cooler. Number 3. Route 2. Not the concept of Route 2 as a whole. I mean, you're gonna need to travel past one town at some point in the game after all, but in the early days of Pokemon, they were really concerned that each and every route had a unique designation, so that you could talk about, say, Route 36 and know exactly what they mean without any confusion. This is why when starting in Hoenn or Sinnoh, they added 100 or 200 in front of the numbers, since it would have been pretty awkward for Gen 3 to start with Route 47 where Johto left off. And then it also would have hampered the remakes of Johto when they did go back and add Route 47. However, whether they realized the numbers would quickly balloon out of control adding 100 each generation, or because Unova was supposed to be a reboot of sorts, they stopped caring about the confusion and went back to Route 1 right at the start. Which is honestly fine, pretty much every town has a main street after all. My problem comes from the fact that they keep making the second routes awful. In Kanto, Route 2 is just the bookends of the much better Viridian Forest that could have just been the whole route. And the forest has more variety of Pokemon than the surrounding route anyway. The only reason it's not totally useless is the side area that you can't access until later through Cut, so you don't even associate it with the half of the route that you used hours ago. Unova makes you go from an empty town to a barren stretch of road that doesn't even need to exist, with only one additional Pokemon to catch over the first route, so they should have just let you go straight into Striaton and take on the gym, so that Route 2 could have been the one just past it with the daycare and Wellspring Cave. That would have made it stand out so much more. Now, to their credit, Kalos heard what I said about Kanto and decided that the way to fix it was to make the other side of the forest a different route altogether, which now means that Route 2 is shorter and more pointless than ever. I should not be able to see the entirety of the route before I've even gone down it. And Alola makes a different mistake by having the route be so long, yet still pointless, that even the Pokemon Center right at the edge of town was too far, so they had to give you another one before the trial. So why couldn't they make it to where you just cut through the graveyard at the edge of town and then go right to Verdant Cavern to be on your way? It can't be because we're not allowed to catch Pokemon within the city limits, because Alola introduced that feature, so these houses on Route 2 could have easily been a part of Howoli City. And don't even get me started on the path to Professor Magnolia's house. Why does she get her own route recognized by the whole region when it should have just been an extended section of Wedgehurst? All of these routes could have easily just been a part of the areas around them, whether that's a forest or a town, without the need for a dedicated label. And the fact that Route 2 always seems to be underwhelming so early on makes you less excited to move on to the next route in case it turns out just as disappointing. Number 2. The Fairy Badge. The Fairy type was so exciting when we first heard about it. A brand new magical type that could beat dragons was exhilarating, and it was the first time since Gen 2 that we ever saw new types. So Fairy had to be something special. However, they needed to make up for lost time, as evidenced by a bunch of past Pokemon changing types, and Kalos introducing so many pure Fairy types all at once, and giving this fledgling type a gem of its very own. So then, what name could best distill down the complicated essence of the Fairy type after going without it for so long? After all, something like Electric started simple with the Thunder Badge, and then moved on to Dynamo, Beacon, and Bolt, just to have the Voltage Badge in this very game. So, with all possible options available, they decided the Fairy Badge was the best name for Valerie's gym. Okay, I can get behind that, it's pretty straightforward. Like we said, they're making up for lost time, but then after we had a break with Z-Crystals and Sword and Shield, they did a soft reboot of sorts by naming all of the badges after the types of the specialists. So that wasn't really a problem for most of the types who had used other titles in the past, but it means that Opal also handed out the Fairy Badge the very next time that badges were a thing. And that was bad enough, but in Paldea, the badges were standardized again, both in design and name, but even though the Team Star challenges aren't officially recognized by the league, it's still called the Fairy Badge, which means that as of now, Every single fairy-type badge has the same name. And unlike the routes, I do not at all see why they would ever stop making the gym badges unique. There are plenty of different words related to all of these elements to use as names, but they especially can't be out of terms for the one that's never even bothered to try. So I'm not saying that's the main reason why some people can claim the fairy type is a bit boring, but it certainly doesn't help. Number 1. Evil teams. Okay, obviously you need some kind of antagonist to make the story compelling. If there were no problems to solve along the way, then it would just turn into a vacation simulator. But the way they go about evil teams seems to be repeated far too often. First, we had Team Rocket, who were content to just do petty crimes. The worst things they ever did was create Mewtwo and take over the radio tower, but those were both in an effort to just steal more Pokémon. However, we quickly got several evil teams bent on global or even galactic domination, which should really warrant the attention of a superhero team, not just a random 10-year-old. But after the 4th or 5th one, having the world ending every single time is a bit old hat, and it lessens the stakes, making you become numb to that exaggerated threat level. So, feeling that they had gone as far as they could, Gen 7 shook things up by using a fake-out evil team that we thought would be the bad guys, when really it was a seemingly altruistic organization behind it all. Poor Team Skull really were just some misunderstood rebels who didn't fit in. But after learning that lesson once, they reverted right back to repeating their ideas by creating 2 more misunderstood, not actually so evil teams in a row, to the point that we're now sick of that as well. I will give Team Star credit for not having a carbon copy of the other real evil group, like the Macro Cosmos and Galar being a pale imitation of the Aether Foundation, but it's exhausting that they feel the need to grind one concept into the dirt before moving on to the next one. When it's actually quite simple to fix, just mix it up a little. Do 1 or 2 actual villains, and then throw in a secretly friendly team that was good-intentioned all along. You wouldn't even have to change the ratio of the teams, just the placement, and then the fatigue wouldn't be so overwhelming. I guess the Legends games are a bit different in their approach, but I think that we can all agree that while we do need someone to fight on occasion in Pokémon, they don't have to keep using the same cookie-cutter models of organizations, whether that's fully immoral to the core, or just lashing out because they needed a buddy. Whichever one it happens to be in the next game, can we please not do the same one so many times in a row, thank you? But maybe you don't mind that, and you're a bit more bothered by all of the professors being trees for some reason. So, which unnecessary repeats do you think are the strangest in Pokémon? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded!